What's up everybody and welcome. I'm Jared, and in this video I want to talk about the origins, I guess, of After the Tearing, kind of some of the first steps I was taking towards its development, and just kind of the very beginning of development. Um, Honestly, it wasn't much of an official process, I guess. I had a bunch of stuff kind of floating around in my head from other projects and things that I've been working on, some of which I kind of briefly talked about in the intro video to After the Tearing. And really, it was one of the things that drove me to finally decide to develop it as a full game was Gaslands. I know I mentioned Gaslands back in the intro video as well. And Gaslands, if you're not familiar with it, it is a PvP tabletop, kind of based in vehicular. I think they describe it as just a game of vehicular mayhem. The part that I really liked about it was the miniatures, the fact that there are none. um, I'm a huge fan of miniatures. I love just all of that stuff. I use miniatures as much as I can, and I try to, get my hands on as many as I can, and that's become a problem, moving back and forth between college and anyways. In Gaslands, they want you to just take like Matchbox cars that you get from the store, smack them with a hammer, sand all the paint off, give them a rust-colored coat, slap a bunch of weapons on there, and those are your stand-ins for the game. And that's doing conversions and stuff for that is super fun. It's relatively easy for anybody to just pick up. It's a lot of fun for somebody that has experience with that sort of thing and acquires the resources to take it way too far and do crazy stuff with it. But anyways, so it was just this past year that I was getting into Gaslands, and Gaslands has some mechanics that you can do like campaign style stuff, but for the most part, it's pretty limited to just kind of almost like that kill team vibe where you just go in, you do your one session with people, and then that's pretty much it. And Gaslands really had me. I was having a ton of fun with it, and it was really inspiring to take it that step further. And again, going back to the music video that I mentioned in the intro video, Five Finger Death Punch's House of the Rising Sun music video, that had been knocking around in my head since the day I saw it. And eventually I was just, taking all of these things, all of these projects I already had, and was just craving that tabletop RPG, the role playing and the campaign style of role playing, and combining that with something kind of like Gaslands. And this was after I had already been thinking, I don't remember how long ago it was. I had this other idea for a story of some sort. It was just kind of one of those things I was just thinking about in my head in my free time or when I was at work. And it was like there was going to be these two siblings, and they grew up in, like a wastelandy type area. I was thinking like it was going to be more like salt flats, like it was cold there, but it was where an ocean had once been, or a sea or something. And they were born as casters, and their mom raised them to, like hide their magic and not let anybody know that they had those capabilities, because everybody that they lived with, the town that they lived in, everybody despised magic users. And this was, again, at the time, I hadn't really coined After the Tearing. I really didn't know what I was designing. And there was going to be this traveler that had come through and was, just like taking a pit stop, and he had like ended up in a gunfight or something prior to this. And the one kid, the son, he's a mechanic, and he's working on the guy's car, and he realizes that the guy's battery is like completely dead, like dead. Like he's like, how are you even operating this vehicle? Come to find out that he's been using like lightning magic to power his car to keep things running. And that's when they end up like leaving and escaping, and they get pursued by a bunch of like the local militia once they realize they're casters, and they go out on their adventure. And it was, I had already had like a bunch of these sort of modern-ish setting, or like postmodern, kind of in the sense of that last one, with magic incorporated into the society. And this is going back years at this point. Thinking about, I was on the D&D wiki, the unofficial D&D wiki, and I was going through, again, this is forever ago. I was going through the modern stuff, and because I was looking to do stuff for like a zombie apocalypse campaign back in high school, and one of the items that somebody had made up caught my eye. It was a riot shield that had been enchanted, and kind of like the flavor text they had in there, if I remember correctly, was like to help with, it was for like SWAT teams and riot police to um like it had like a fear spell or something attached to it to, like stave off protesters or rioters or whatever. And I had just that single item I had in my head for forever. And eventually I was thinking one day, I was just like, yeah, people like cop shows. People love cop shows. Well, and again, this is almost like I'm trying to recreate Bright, but I think this was even prior to the movie Bright being released. And I was thinking of like a cop show, but there was, there's all these magic users now, like whatever. I was at the time, it wasn't extraplanar races, it was just another plane of humans. There's some other humans that come over, and they open this first, like this is like the first big city that's allowing them to exist. But now you have all of these like magic using criminals, and you have the one new like sergeant deputy or whatever, and he's being teamed up with a magic user who he despises because, like I referenced in the original intro video, he was, when he was younger, and this is where I had that idea of the magic becoming like a drug epidemic. He was, when he was a lot younger, before he decided to go into the police force, he was like hanging out with a bunch of friends, like back in the woods, and one of them had bought this like black market magic, and ended up setting himself on fire and dying because of it. And so he was like scarred for all these years, and that's when he decided he wanted to vouch to be part of the police force of this new city. And that's as far as I'll go on that. But anyways, the point being that like the idea of having like a more modern system with an integrated magic and a divide between classes and stuff, was something that I had been thinking about for a while, and just hadn't really put it into anything that I had made a ton of progress on. And eventually, after Gaslands and all of that, it just started kind of falling into place and clicking. I had all of these different things, and even at the time, I hadn't really realized it, that they were perfect precursors to what I had been wanting to do. Once I started developing after the tearing a little bit, once I started actually thinking about, originally I had it just limited to being that wasteland style vibe, but then I wanted to bring in, this was kind of around the time of cyberpunk becoming a big thing, and I kind of already liked that, but I wasn't, I would prefer high fantasy over a cyberpunk type setting. But then after watching all of the Avengers movies and everything, I was still really enjoying that sort of, that stuff that wasn't like super high tech, like high sci-fi stuff. I guess like low medium sci-fi. I guess I'm not super well versed in that, so I guess I don't know exactly how to delineate that. Anyways, I just eventually, it just eventually started writing itself. Once I kind of already had all these bits and pieces from other things, it just fell into place, and I loved it so much, how it just was coming so easily to me. And I mean, that's not something that everybody has. I'm not saying that that's an easy thing. It just, for me, for this project, it just happened so easily once I started thinking about what it could be. And having that like it's kind of a trope at this point, the world being destroyed by magic, and people hating magic users for that. Except it's not exactly that. It's pretty close. It basically is, but having the kind of the slight twist being that it was just untrained magic users that caused the issues, whereas people that are trained in it and know how to properly use it don't really cause additional issues. But try explaining that to the general population after the world is going to hell. So at this point, I was in my idea phase. I had made a Google Doc so I could work on it. I could throw stuff in there on my computer, on my phone, whatever I was using at the time. And I had already kind of developed some of the races for another project that I had been working on a little, like a bit farther back. It was going to be like a Victorian age Cthulhu-esque political intrigue, but still like gang violence and sort of stuff, all confined to like one city that was it. I'll get into that at another time. I had the extraplanar races, the current extraplanar races from After the Tearing. A few of them, not all of them, a few of them I already had developed for this, and I was using Hero Forge actually at the time. I can't remember if I mentioned Hero Forge already. Hero Forge has been an amazing asset. It's been an amazing tool to use to like get my ideas into forms that I can see and show other people to let them see what I'm thinking in my head. I already had a few of these races. Some of them I've scrapped since then, but I was like, well, it makes sense to have them in there. I not really just I didn't want exactly the same like traditional fantasy races. I wanted to differentiate it a little bit, and I already had a bunch of these that were like distant cousins of a lot of the fantasy races. And I was like, yeah, I can work through this. This makes totally sense. This makes complete sense. So again, at this point, I just had so many pieces that I was fitting together in this new puzzle, and it was just awesome to be working through that. And the problem eventually ended up being was I had my senior year of college. I had my senior project. I was working on other things, and After the Tearing really went on the back burner. By my last semester, this past spring, I had pretty much two classes for the most part. I had my senior project and I had my capstone art class. I wasn't going to be able to finish my art minor, but I wanted to take the capstone anyways. I needed to fill the credits so I could still be a full-time student. And it was with one of the professors who I knew her and her husband since my freshman year. They were both great. I loved them both. And I figured it'd just be like a good thing to do to take my mind off of my senior project. And I decided that I wanted to turn After the Tearing into my art project, in a sense. I put together my whole like pitch presentation and laid everything out. I was gonna 3D model a bunch of miniatures, use the resin printer in the lab to print them out. I was going to build a terrain piece. I was gonna make some more cars because I already had all the materials from Gaslands at this point. And I already had, like some of the rules. I had a rough combat system going. I was like, well, if I get that together, I already have a few of the other things together. This is what I wanted. I presented it kind of a full plan of everything I needed to do, a rough timeline of everything I was going to need to do for the project. And, I just pitched it with enough enthusiasm, and my professor just kind of was like, well, I don't know exactly how you're going to do this, but you seem to have a plan. You seem like this is what you're set on. Go for it. And so that's what I ended up doing. I developed a few pages of rules, designed the character sheets, made a bunch of pre-made characters, designed like 7 or 8 pretty rough models that I did on the 3D printer. I did a substantial amount of work, quite honestly. By the time it was all said and done, I had half neglected my senior project because at that point I didn't care much about it. I had kind of lost interest in my senior project. I was just really passionate about working on After the Tearing, and I graduated. Everything's fine, but by the end of it, I had my finished like demo for After the Tearing, and I was super hyped about it. I was super proud of what ended up getting put together, and unfortunately, nobody got around to playing it because this was like in the middle of COVID, and it was just installed over one weekend, so not much time for a lot of the other students to check it out. But I was there on opening night with some of the other professors, especially from the art department, and a number of the ones that were crowding around my display on a table that I designed myself for a separate independent study I was doing. I was talking to a lot of the professors, and quite a few of whom had experience playing tabletops and stuff. And once once they got me to open up a bit about all of it, I just kind of spilled out everything, and they could tell that I was super excited about the project. And it was just awesome to see it there physically in front of me, that I had managed to complete it. And so then after that, I just kind of wrote out the rest of the semester after finishing my senior project, and I just relaxed for a bit. But then once I got home, I got right back into it. I mean, I guess not right back into it. I had to, readjust to working and all of that. But especially on weekends and stuff, I did my best. I would just sit and type for like a full Saturday, just working on it, going through different things, reviewing other stuff that I had elsewhere on my computer and in notebooks and everything. And eventually I said, all right, I'm ready to go for my first playtest. I had already had the baseline combat system sort of in there, and I was working on some other mechanics and things. And so I got a hold of a bunch of my friends from high school and was like, hey, who would want to do a playtest with me? I'd rather it just be a full campaign and, give us time to hang out and all of that. And once we were in the session and they were role-playing as their characters and they're interacting with the NPCs that I had them around, it was just so much, we were having so much fun, and it just made so much sense. The way that their characters' backstories were working and the way they designed their characters and the interactions they were having, it just made so much sense in this system that was so new to them. And for so much lore that I don't have down in the module that they would have had access to. And it just was so awesome, just to experience how they were perceiving the system and how they were perceiving the world. And it was very gratifying. It made me feel confident that it was something that had some flavor to it, a world that had some life to it. And I guess that's pretty much today's tip is have confidence in what you're making. Have confidence that you've built something that makes sense within itself. And unless the point is that it doesn't, if you're doing some like quirky comedy type thing, which is awesome and fine, I'd probably like to know about it. But having the world hold itself together, I guess, in a sense, which is kind of like something that I've always mentioned to my friends about different like anime and stuff. Like, it's so that you could have like the most ridiculous circumstances, the most ridiculous world building, but within itself it makes sense, and it's so shameless in the way it does it. And I guess I feel like that's a good model to work off of. And it's one of those things where one of my housemates last week, we were hanging out on the patio and just chilling, and he kind of, we were talking about it with another one of our friends, and he started kind of like grilling me in this like comedic, snarky sort of way, and was like, well, Jared, why does the world need your game? What makes After the Tearing worth having? And I just kind of had to laugh, and I was like, well, I mean, I'd rather be asked that question than not be asked that question. And it kind of came down to, it just being a passion project, one just being something I wanted to do. But again, having a system be, I don't really want to say more realistic, but I guess a bit more of a challenge, having more emphasis on some more tactics, skirmish style type stuff, but like kind of having a sigh of relief when your character makes it through, when they survive an ordeal. I wanted to scale down health from kind of like what the last few versions of D&D has been. I wanted damage to really mean something even at higher levels, but also when you hit a higher level and you have better equipment, watching, weaker bullets just kind of ping off of your armor, or just stopping them dead in the air with your magic that you've trained up to or that you've worked up to, having that be satisfying. And so yeah, having that arc of knowing that you are getting better, and it happening kind of incrementally, but also I wanted something that really gave a lot of player agency, where you're building the class of your character, kind of you're building your archetype the way that you want to do it, with different feats, focusing on different training, whether you want to go high tech path, high magic path, combination of the two, and being able to play a character that hates magic or thinks magic is the way that they're going to save the world, and allowing that conflict to exist between players and NPCs. Well, players' characters, not between players. Avoid conflict directly between players. But I also wanted a system that had like slower recoveries that were a bit more drawn out, to give more opportunities for downtime, a bit more role play aspect in that sense. Somebody's injured, we have to do something, like, not we have to do something else, but we have the option to do something else instead of just one combat after the next. We're taking a week. You guys, you go through, you take 10, 15 minutes to go through a week of what happens with your players. As, the world is still going on. There's still things going on, but they can, take their little slice out, take a week off, get some training in, recover, all the while making sure they have the resources to even be able to do that. And then some additional mechanics for character stats, like the resolve mechanic, where it's not really your health, it's your mental state and your will to keep going, and the thing that you pull from when you cast magic or when certain things happen. It's a little bit sort of like the sanity from Call of Cthulhu, but not really. I guess that's the first thing that I can think of off the top of my head to compare it to. But I also wanted a more simplified XP system, not having to do a bunch of calculator math like you kind of have to do in D&D now, where you have first to 10 level is 10 XP, 21st to 11th to 20th level is 20 XP, and 21st to 30th level is 30 XP. And you're getting XP based on like time commitment and challenge of certain things. I don't have exact rules on that yet, but it's, even outside of combat, you are talking to NPCs and you find a more viable route, something that's less dangerous than the route that that the players were going to take. Well, they get an XP for that. They fight through a combat. It's pretty bloody. 2 players nearly die. 6 XP for that. So you're gaining XP kind of in the middle of the session. The DM's just kind of DM or GM, GM, Game Master, not necessarily DM. Anyways, you're giving out XP as the session's going on for different things. And I don't know if it's going to be a point where you can give XP to individual characters, because I know some players aren't fans of that, but I wouldn't mind that being part of the system, because since you can give out XP in such small increments, it doesn't end up being like levels worth of gaps. You might have one player that's just leveling up, you know, one session before everybody else, but then everybody else catches up by the next session, or something along those lines. And that was just one of the things that I wanted, you know, kind of simple head math, I guess, in a sense, for certain things, most of which gets marked down on your character sheet anyways. But that was just one of, instead of having, you know, D&Ds where you have a dragon's worth 250,000 XP and you have to have 780,000 to level up. So now you have to track all this. Most of the time, in at least a lot of the sessions, a lot of campaigns that I've played in, you just level up per session. I feel like that's how a lot of games end up going for just friends playing amongst friends. But, you know, just different, there's just different mechanics, different systems that I'm still playing with, still working through. Like, as of right now, it's mostly modifier based for your rolls instead of, like how D&D has just, they've kind of just moved to an advantage and disadvantage system. There's still some modifiers that they work through for different things, but I'm staying away from that for now. I might go in that direction in the future anyways. But it's just one of those things that I just haven't decided on. I just have to, you know, run through some playtests, see what works, see what doesn't. If the system is working well enough the way I have it and I just need to tweak it a little bit instead of completely overhauling it, that's probably what I'll end up doing. But as of right now, I know that there's different options to pick from for that sort of thing. I'm just rolling with what I've got so far. Bonus tip for today, kind of what I was saying before. Trick yourself into doing work. Give yourself a kick in the pants one way or another to just get moving forward on stuff. I mean, heck, if you can turn something you're working on into a school project, go for it. I mean, if you can get a grade on something that you're actually passionate about and you're working on, you're killing two birds with one stone on that one, and all the power to you. Granted, it's much more difficult to turn doing the laundry and washing the dishes into a grade. So if somebody can figure out how to do that, that doesn't help me anymore because I'm not in school anymore. So share that with other people down in the comments, because after you like and subscribe, I want you to go down in the comments and, you know, as I'll always ask, anything else that you guys would like to see for After the Tearing, any ideas that you guys might have, and all of that other good stuff. Throw that down in the comment section. I would greatly appreciate it. So anyways, I know this one was a little bit long-winded today, a bit more of a rant, but that's kind of an emulation, I guess, of the process that it's taken me to work through After the Tearing and the ongoing process of After the Tearing. So that's about all I've got for today. I'm Jared. This is After the Tearing, and I'll catch y'all later.